Hi guys, what I want to talk about today is the difference between what we do in training versus what we would do at a hunt test or a field trial, and the difference between those two, and why we're doing different things in training versus hunting or a hunt test or a field trial. So what I'm going to talk about today is literal casting, meaning hand signals. And literal casting to me means whatever hand signal or cast that I give, that if the dog took it perfectly, it would not need another cast. So if the dog is there and we're going here and the line is back over here, to get from here to there, from here to there, the literal cast would not involve an over. Now some people may give an over and then stop them and then give them a back, or give an over to get this kind of a deal. And so a literal cast would be whatever cast you give here to get that. Now, that's not even a 45, the way I cast my dogs. That's a straight up, maybe with a step. But whatever, how sophisticated your casting is, whatever cast you would call your literal cast, it is the cast that if the dog did not need another cast from that point. I hope that's clear. So, and what I want to talk about here is, when I'm talking about literal casting, is the difference between when we're in training, what we're trying to do, versus when we're at a hunt test, a field trial, or even hunting. But before I get into this too deep, I'm talking about a dog too that totally knows the task we're asking them to do. Has proven that it knows what to do. Has proven that it is totally understands it. I'm not talking about teaching. I'm talking about a dog that knows what to do, which is very important. So I'm going to talk about this poison bird here, which is a pretty advanced concept, but this would go for rather it's sit, stay, hold, heel, deliver to hand, whatever the case may be, the difference between what we do in training versus what we do at a hunt test or a field trial, and why. All right, so here we go. Say this is the starting line. This is a blind retrieve. There's a gunner here throwing a mark this way. And the object here with the poison bird is to pick up this blind before we pick up that mark. And let's talk about what we would do in training and why, first of all. Now in training, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do whatever I do to tell the dog not to pick this up and then to send them. And let's assume the dog starts for the poison bird. I will stop the dog and give a right hand cast, fairly literal, maybe with a step, to get the dog off of this bird. If the dog refuses that and starts to head for the poison bird again, I will stop the dog again, and depending on its level of training and the attitude of the dog and the history and a lot of other things that go into it, I may correct on the first cast refusal. Now, if it's a more sensitive dog, or maybe not as much experience, I may use attrition. Either way, if it takes me one cast or if it takes me 20 casts, I'm going to try to pick this bird up. I am going to pick this bird up with a literal cast. So again, it may involve a correction for the cast refusal, and that gets it, which is fine. Or it may involve attrition. So the dog digs back to the poison bird. I stop the dog, call it back to the point where it gave me the cast refusal, give it the same cast again. If it digs back for the poison bird again, I stop it, call it in, and give the same cast again. If it takes 20 times, I am going to get the literal cast. I am not going to go and give what I would call the helpful cast and go to an over to help them out here. And again, we're beyond the stage where we're trying to teach this. The dog knows what to do and it just isn't doing it. I'm not going to give the helpful over cast. Now I may move up a little bit to simplify if I'm totally getting into a battle, but I'm going to stay with that literal cast in almost every case. Occasionally, if I'm just totally getting buried and I need to get out of it, I'll do whatever I need to do. But generally speaking, I'm going to stick with it until I get that cast. And again, that may take one cast, that may take 20, but I'm going to get the literal cast. And I feel over time, if I'm consistent with that, I'm going to start to get this cast, not only without correction, but like in one cast, like they totally get it. So again, I'm not training for the dog to necessarily look great. I'm training to make the dog better. And it's not about picking up this bumper or this bird. It's about, when the dog is right here, getting the cast that I want. Once it's decided it's going to go for the poison bird, the training concept now is to get the cast that I want, not to pick this up. This is secondary, or not, maybe even thirdary, but it's not the priority. It's to get this cast. So that's what I'm there to do. not pick this up. So I'm going to give the cast until I get it. Now, if I'm at an event, a hunt test or a field trial, I'm not there to train. I'm there to try to make the dog look as good as it possibly can. So if the dog is heading for this, I'm going to give a much bigger, more helpful cast to get him out of there and get him over here with the least amount of trouble possible, because I'm there to pick up the ribbon. I'm not there to train the dog. I'm there to have the dog look as good as it possibly can. But that's totally different than the purpose of training. In training, I am not looking to avoid trouble. I'm looking to get the dog to take the challenging cast or the task or whatever I'm asking them to do and doing it consistently. And again, this is not what it's all about. This cast right here is what it's all about. So keep that in mind as you go through this, the different parts of training. And unfortunately, and I'll hold myself responsible for this with my own clients, that are just starting to get this literal casting, and I'm really preaching it in training. They'll go to an event and try to get a literal cast when they need a big helpful cast, and they crash and burn, and that's totally my fault for not ingraining in them the difference between the two. So again, you don't want to go to an event and try to give the literal cast just perfectly, because you're there to make them look good. So maybe you give the bigger cast. More than likely you give an over or a big angle or something that's going to help get them out of the problem area. So those are important differences and different reasons, different things we're trying to accomplish versus trying to get the dog to look good at a test or a trial versus training them to do a particular task, as perfectly as possible. So, and the only way in my mind that we can do that is ask them to give us that particular cast when it's very, very challenging. And if we insist upon that and do it consistently, I feel when I go to an event, my chances are greater. I mean, there's no guarantees, but it's certainly going to help my chances when I need even a bigger cast to get them to leave this area. And I mean, if it's real subtle in training to get this real subtle, sophisticated cast and they totally get out of there, I feel when I go to an event and give a bigger cast that the chances are a lot more likely they're going to do that. So I wanted to discuss a little bit about the differences between what we do in training versus what we do at testing and trialing. Many of you probably already know this. A lot of the stuff I need to rehear. So again, that's the difference. And as I tell my clients, is in training, just keep in mind, it's not about picking up the bird necessarily. It's about doing the task of whatever we're asking them to do. In this case, it's to cast off the poison bird, or not even going to it, just lining past it. If it's a water cheaty mark, it's not about picking up the bird, it's about getting in the water and doing the task right to get there. So a lot of the advanced concepts that we're asking them to do has very little in training to do with getting to the bird necessarily. It's about how you get there. So, and if we do that when we go to an event, our chances are going to be much greater. So I hope that's been helpful. If you guys have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks.